Alright, Bonehawks, this video is all about the Bonehawk podcast. We have done a few of these already. We think we've kind of got all the kind of little niche things out of the way. So this is the official launch. This is episode 1 of the Bonehawk podcast. We'll be doing this as often as we can, hopefully weekly, but it depends. We're going over the tier list today. I'm going to give you my tier list on the main roster of characters, not the cameos. We're going to talk about that later. Let me know what your hot takes are. Follow along. Thank you. We'll have timestamps down there for you if you want to jump to a specific grouping. And yeah, let's get into it.
Accept your death.
Welcome to the first official episode of the Bonehawk podcast. We, throughout the last ones, have been working and tweaking on some stuff. As you can see on the screen here, we got a little bit more official here. So congratulations as well, Hatyr, for joining me on the very first episode of the Bonehawk podcast.
Oh, thanks. Happy to be here.
As usual, we are going to start out by reading comments on the previous one. So thank you for leaving the comments. And if you want to be featured on the next one, feel free to let me know or feedback or whatever. So we're going to, first one is Iconic Horror 966. It's kind of a two-parter here. So the first one, was it Garth that Hatyr was referencing?
I don't know what he's talking. I need a timestamp.
Yeah, if you could timestamp that for I wasn't really sure where the Garth came from. I was like, Garth Brooks, maybe? Like, when were we talking about country music?
I'm pretty sure it's
like a Wayne's World?
Garth, yeah. I think that maybe I made a
like a Party On kind of
reference.
thing?
I don't know. That movie came out when I was a young teen or something, so it's been sitting in my subconscious for a really long time. I wouldn't be surprised if that happened. I was even aware of it.
Yeah, I watched that movie like when I was small, and I haven't seen it since, so I have no idea. Second part of the question, Dink, do you prefer the new Lovecraftian approach to Quan Chi or the old? Do you guys think NRS should be more bold like this with future returning characters like him and Ermac? This doesn't just apply to MK1. I'm not going to lie, at first I was a little skeptical of the Quan Chi changes. I was like, this is a little extreme and a little away from what makes Quan Chi, Quan Chi, I feel. But it has kind of grown on me a little bit, It is kind of cool that he like controls like this Netherrealm demon kind of a thing, and I actually don't mind it at all. It was definitely a shock to the system for just seeing it at first. Like, what the hell? They massacred my boy. But the more that I play and the more like using everything, it makes sense and is pretty cool. But it is a pretty bold move. On the other opposite end of that, Ermac was one that I saw, and immediately I was like, holy yes, I love all of this. Like, a big departure from the last one time that we saw Ermac. And I mean, Hatyr, you've dabbled with Ermac more than I have, so you've probably seen more than I have with the new design. But like, as far as the Ermac side, what do you think of that?
I mean, he's sick. There's so much attention to detail. I've been editing together some video for some stuff I've been putting together with the Frost Vortex. So I'm in my software and I'm kind of like trying to edit it cleanly. So I'm getting a lot of like still frames or, trying to line things up and some of the weird crooked neck things. And you just let those limp for a couple frames and all these cool little, like, he always looks awesome. His mid-round taunts are awesome. There's a lot of, it adds a lot. It gives you like an extra layer of excitement. Like, makes you look forward to playing the character if that's the sort of aesthetic that fits you.
Yeah, I mean,
Adds to their personality and things.
It's a risky move, but I mean, I would say for both characters it paid off. And like I was saying, in two different ways. Like Quan at first I was like, and that grew on me, and Ermac was right away. So
I don't think that it was super risky because I think NRS has proven over time that they have no qualms about trying to reinvent things or re-envision characters, and you'll see characters play quite differently from game to game, or have like a new aesthetic as they try to like deepen them and whatever their train of thought is, whether it's going to fit into the game's mechanics overall. And I'm not sure what goes into the designer for something like that. I think that leads into one of the other comments that was talking about basically that sort of same thing. Wasn't there another comment?
Yeah, I think there is
about how it's like those two are very obviously
we're like supposed to be like.
Well,
in the
no,
game?
it's just that they have a little bit more attention to detail than the others. Not that the other characters aren't fleshed out. There's others. I think that Garrus, he has his own, like, you'll get into that in the tier list, right? But as far as like his design and the moves that they gave him, like I can see the vision. Even if he doesn't play MK1 very well,
Right.
he's got some depth too, right? If you're the kind of person that likes to be in practice mode more than versus mode, Geras, Ermac are both like really good characters to
Practice
be
mode
playing.
characters, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, well, thanks for that comment. Hopefully we answered everything other than the Garth reference, but you'll let us know. Next one comes from Darian Robinson, 8553. Says, needs timestamps, please. And I definitely agree with you. For the most part, I do try and do timestamps. The last one, we kind of bounced around a little bit, so I wasn't really sure where to kind of put them. But this definitely has not fallen on deaf ears. I have heard that, and I think it's, especially with this one doing the tier list, it'll be a little bit easier to kind of put it into different chunks. Very possible you use the timestamp on this to just completely bypass my answer here too, which would actually be pretty funny. But
Yeah.
thank you for that. We will make sure that we have them. Next, we go to Rooster666. I think Invasions is definitely going in the right direction with the character trials and things. I also like the hybrid characters and the secret fights. If we have more challenge tower from MK9 type things, I think this mode can shape up quite nicely. I don't feel this is a turd that needs polishing at all. I do wish they would have waited 6 months just so everyone wouldn't be so shitty about every little thing.
Dude, that's so funny. That's why I picked this one, because I absolutely agreed. I'm a victim of that, and like this is in like direct response to what I was saying about Invasions on the the last time we talked.
Yeah, I mean, I
And
definitely agree.
I don't disagree at all. And that that's stuff I think about. And I spent a lot of time in Invasions since we last talked because
Yeah, me too.
leveling at cameos and trying to do a few sorts of things. And I agree. If it had not been for that first impression, I would be a lot more open. Like what I'd be complaining about with Invasions would be the super annoying camera. Like when
Oh,
you're
yeah.
just trying to like get around and the camera spins around on you, and so I hit down twice, but no, the camera inverted, so I just walked right back to where I was before. Things like that, which is, I don't know, it's just not great. But the invasions and stuff, I feel like they honestly took away. They had an honest conversations with themselves. They're like, people hate this. How do we make this something that people don't hate?
Yeah.
So they added in the variety of like the pyramid characters, the alternate universe like mashup characters, which is kind of funny. But you always get like one of those consumables that buff one of your stats and stuff too. So it's like something that you're kind of like, I'm sure there's people that just run around aimlessly, just waiting to get invaded for stuff like
Just
that.
to see the characters, like
So
Crocodile.
I think it's and get their stat booster things or like whatever. Oh, I mean, while we're talking about that, have you seen any more interesting ones? I saw Quantum Chi, Geras and Quantum
Really? I
Chi.
haven't seen that one.
Yeah.
I saw the bald Ashra you were talking about.
Oh
The
Jesus.
Ashra Kano. My God.
Uh,
Oh man, I thought of you right away as soon as I saw it. I was like, that's nightmare fuel. I don't like this either.
That's bad. Like, cause she's got the scarring on her brows, her demonic sort of stuff too, which just exacerbates it, in my opinion. It's disturbing imagery.
All right, well let's we talked about invasions last time, so let's not put too much time on that one. Thank you for that. We have AZE Plays 3563. With Shujinko's new Reiko moves, I just want to say that you as Quan Chi might feel like you're bullying him, but for me as a Shao player, I still have to deal with them running away and zoning me out. I feel like his steals strengths are very character dependent, so you can't necessarily consider them busted. Just my opinion, and I totally understand that, and I think that kind of plays to how the cameo system works. I am going to talk about specifically Reiko Shujinko later on here, but I definitely agree that it might not always be the same. I guess with Shao, you would still steal the Shuriken, so you can have a little bit of counter zoning, but then you're having to charge Shujinko in between that, whereas Reiko doesn't. So, and I definitely, but I mean, when you get in, it's like twice as scary because, like, if you go into your like axeless stance, you got your safe overhead, your safe lows, and the safe mid command grab. Like, that's crazy.
Right, but it's like a mode. It's like an install mode almost or something, or a
Yeah.
stance that he's got to get into. We were talking about that a little bit earlier before we were recording about if Shujinko is totally crazy with one character, but fits really well with another character, like brings them up to the level that they want him at. And so, like we're talking about, let's say Quan Shujinko versus a Shao Shujinko, even though,
Right.
as you're explaining, there is some trade-off, right? But that's something that I failed to kind of like consider. Sometimes I get that kind of tunnel vision. So That's why I like this comment. But how do you do that? How would you, on a Shujinko level, how would you stave off his synergy with one character without it affecting like everybody, right?
Yeah, that's a balance line. I'll leave that to the professionals. I really don't have any idea on how you would balance
I
that.
know.
I'm
I'm
not
trying
gonna
not to
pretend
get
to.
too hung up on stuff like that. I'm at the point, like, I don't love the Cameo system just overall, and that's just personal preference. And
Sure.
I'm at the point now, like, you just accept it. There's no point in even like
It
having
is.
any sort of like negative thoughts about it, other than just stating your preference, right? But to be hung up on it at this point, I feel like is super unproductive, and it's not going to change unless they introduce some sort of mode or something. But
Yeah,
it's a Cameo game, so
it's how they wanted to
it's
play
what
it.
we have. Yep.
System we got. Not necessarily the system we wanted, but it's a system we got. Okay, well, thank you to everyone for the comments. Appreciate you. And hopefully we'll see a few of you in the next episode. And for now, I think that we are ready to start the tier list. Hater, what do you think? You feeling good about this?
Not really. I don't think I play enough to have many opinions about this, other than like the kind of the overall things. But I do try to keep up on what other people are saying, and is be. I mean, it's you're the showrunner here, and I'm just here to kind of like ask follow-up questions. I've got to be the surrogate for the audience
The
if we
surrogate.
need a elaboration and stuff. So that's my role here, I think, for the most part.
I love that. And I want to say that you have created this particular tier maker format here. And it looks super clean. I'll link it in the description. Thank you for that, Hater. I was trying to find, like, I see there's one that everyone's using with, like, the red lines and stuff. I was trying to find
Yeah.
that one, and Hater just said, screw that. I'm just going to make you a better one. And here we are.
So it just so everybody knows, if you're wondering where people get all these renders and stuff from the game that they put in their thumbnails or I use for this tier list, they come from mortalkombatwarehouse.com. So go ham and use them for whatever you. So this is like nothing fancy. It was just about making sure that everything's nice and uniform, as much as I could get it, but I didn't spend like a ton of time on it or anything. But yeah, mortalkombatwarehouse.com.
Cool. Not sponsored, just fan of the product, you know?
Hashtag not sponsored.
Hashtag not
you know.
sponsored. All right, so we're starting here with Ashra, and Ashra is a character that I've always found very annoying to fight against. She has a super good armor move, which is a teleport, and I'm only just now starting to see people mess around with like her hell stance, because for like the first few months of the game, like not saying people haven't, but like I'm seeing it way more often that they're switching back and forth, which I think is really good for counter zoning. And then I don't think she has to commit to the teleport in the dark stance. Maybe you can. I know that you played Ashra a little bit at the start there, Hater. Maybe you can confirm the specifics of that. But I think she can just cancel it into like a whiff kind of a thing.
Well, that's the difference of the move. So her back forward two, when it's in light stance, so she can hold it, which is the delay. So she stays in place. She has the astral projection, and when it's over in her light stance, she teleports to that location, and she can hold down while she's doing that to do the little slash sort of
Right.
follow up to that. When you're in dark stance, you do not do the slam. You teleport forward, but there's no move, which is what makes it a better version because you're not committed to the negative frames. It's actually, I think, +1 on anything that it's canceled after a block string.
That's crazy.
And you're starting to see a lot more of that sort of stuff. And she still has the follow-up slash if she wants. She just doesn't have that slam in the middle that the light one does, which is kind of what you want.
Yeah,
Right? You don't
yeah.
want to get punished. Like
Exactly.
it's your
She's got good movement. She plays the game very well. She has good synergy with the cameos, and she does pretty decent damage. So I have her in
bonus points that Serena is like a really good cameo for her. So you have like the Demon Squad, like it fits very thematically.
Yeah, for the bonus lore bonus. I love Hater's
Right.
lore bonus. So with all of that,
yeah.
we're moving her up into the S tier here.
Oh,
I think
dang.
that's
Okay.
I think that's where I'm comfortable placing her. Moving on to Baraka. Baraka, as we know, hits like a truck. I would say his weakness is kind of getting zoned, but I mean, he has the blade charge, which he can put a couple different cameos behind, like Kano and Striker, for example, and then he just kind of gets in for free. He has the air roll, and then he has a projectile of his own, I suppose, and his fatal blow, which hits like literally the entire screen. I played one earlier, and I tried to jump to like get away from the fatal blow, and it hit me at like the peak of my jump. It was so obnoxious.
The hitbox is huge. It's like 3/4 screen or something. I think Ermac is full screen. I think Baraka's is close, but not full screen.
He's got a lot of tools to work with, and I think he plays the game well with the cameos and whatnot. But I don't think he's particularly super dirty in any sort of way. He's very, very honest. He's very, very good, and he hits really hard. But he doesn't feel like super duper overwhelming. And he's got the low and the overhead, which a good Baraka will mix up. They're both safe if in certain circumstances, but he can get punished on them. So I think he's a
He's a
solid
good
in
defense check, right? No,
100%.
sorry, not to cut you off there, but he's a good defense check, not just for that mix-up, but he really forces you. If you play against Barakas regularly, you have a training partner or a friend that plays Baraka, you need to learn how to flawless block. And because his
100%.
chip damage is insane, and the ways that Kameo can back it up, and even with the striker nerfs, and I have heard that a lot from people that just use striker in general, like the nerfs definitely affected their game plan. People that thinks that it wasn't enough, like please,
Yeah.
please no more. It's
Oh,
actually quite
stop.
bad.
Yeah.
But he's solid, like you said. I feel like he's honest. He just makes you pay for it, right? He hits hard and he's got the chip, but he doesn't have a lot of dirt outside of that
Yeah.
little mix up.
Honest character, but can be negated by things like flawless blocking, being able to react to his things. So, but still good. I have him in the A tier. And sometimes when I see people post tier lists, and or when I have posted tier lists in the past, and I'll put somebody like not at like the top tier, and they're like, "Oh, so you're saying he's garbage?" And it's like, no, no. Like, there's literally like two tier. Like, my S tier is like best in the game, like bar none. Then there's like super good characters. Then there's like they're okay characters, but they maybe struggle in a couple areas. Then like low tier, and then I have the D tier for one particular character. But yeah, so I'm not saying any character is bad if they go in the A tier. Just saying.
And I mean, I don't think there's a bad character in the game isolated, looking at it in a vacuum.
Right.
You know, their designs and stuff like that. But some characters just don't play MK1 very well. And that you hear that about all fighting games. They can't all be winners, and you'll see it like
That's
when
true.
people talk about Street Fighter 6. Literally, just she's a little dry. She just doesn't play the game as well as other characters.
Right.
You know, literally any fighting game. It's got to be somebody.
Someone's got to
And
be
right
there.
right now it's Havoc.
Unfortunately. But hey, we haven't got their spoilers, but if you've seen literally any other tier list. So we got Ermac next. And Ermac, from what I've seen and what I've played, can be played in a multitude of ways, from cancels to Vortex. Shout out to your thread on Test Your Might there with the all the examples of the
Thanks.
Frost Vortex. I'll link that in the description too. That's really, really well done if you want to learn that Vortex. But yeah, I just think he's a character who, again, he has a lot of different things he can do. I don't think he's inherently dirty. But just a strong character. And it's early on, so that might change. But I have him up in the A tier, and Hatyr even playing a lot with him. I'm not sure if that sounds about right to you or not.
Last week, so after a week of just pre-release, and everyone was just kind of like, some people were putting him like in top 3 or top 4. A couple people even like top 1, but other people, I don't know. He seems pretty mid, but people get really hung up on damage, especially like really early. But at this point, given just double the time, so now we're the week after his official release, so people have had him for 2 weeks. I have not seen I have not seen a single tier list in the last week that doesn't have Ermac in S tier, and it's because of Janet, and that's the meta right
Right.
now, and people putting in a lot of work. Janet's like the new Cyrac, right? Like how I don't know if I can look at one more triple jump punch combo. I gotta say,
Yeah.
but so I think that's fair. But I saw he's dirty. I don't know what you're talking about. Like literally, I feel like the only quote unquote bad thing about the character is this like super shitty backdash, but that's
Right.
just the way that he's designed. If
It's
you
the
need to
balance.
create distance backwards, especially when you're pressuring somebody, you know, if you want to use your plus on block standing 1 and try to backdash, you know, or your neutral on block and you try to backdash to whiff punish a poke attempt or something, his backdash will not do that. But if he cancels that into a backdash, you know, that's big payoff. So he's
different.
got a really cool balance, and like the right sorts of things are high and they don't have as good a range as you might think that they are. So, and he's got an execution barrier, and I think that's why a lot of people have him lower. You can play him like way more basic and straightforward. You don't need to be doing all the fancy stuff, and he's still like really, really good. But when people can go really haywire with the pressure and the cancels and really get inside of your head, he is nutso. Like he is the way he can whiff punish, and I don't know. I think he's got dirt.
All right,
for
all right.
sure. He's a really good character.
He looks like he's super solid. Like it's so funny you bring up the damage thing because I remember the first day all over Twitter was just like, I don't think this character hits very hard, and like,
Well, people are like scaling. They're trying to use the levitate cancels and all that sort of stuff. And raw levitates even scale the combo. So if he puts you in the
oh,
lift,
interesting.
the EX lift, and you just try to generate some meter by doing an empty levitate and then continue your combo, that combo's not scaled from the empty levitate. So people are just
Right.
scaling the shit out of their combos. So people have found that balance in between really straightforward stuff and swaggy stuff and things that they like to set up. He's so versatile. He's so malleable. You can really people talking about how they want to be able to express themselves through their character through combos and things like Ermac is absolutely one of those characters.
Yeah, I can definitely see that too by the different people I've seen playing him in completely different ways. So I just, from what I've seen so far, I don't know that I'd put him in the top tier. He just doesn't feel to me like the same as the other characters I'm going to put there. But again, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's early. Like you're saying, he's got a lot of
I
dirt.
mean, it is early, and I'm not arguing with A tier. I just wanted to put that little footnote about he said he didn't have any dirt, and I was like, I don't know about that because
Well, that's why
man,
you're
I
here.
see him harassing the shit out of people.
The little checks, the little checks. I love it.
Yeah.
Next, we're going on to Geras, and this is an interesting character that you don't really see too much, you know, as like maybe, I don't know, I can't even think of any that I've really seen in tournaments. Like I know Burrito Voorhees has been rocking the character, and Gur was doing stuff at the front. But I haven't really seen Gur out lately though, so I'm not really sure what's going on there. I don't think Geras plays this game very well. I think like he can do stuff. He's got decent damage, and I just feel there's too many ways to counter him. Like I have him in my C tier. Like he's like you were saying. I don't think any character is like, you know, not viable technically. But I think Geras just has to work really, really hard and needs really specific cameos to kind of do what he wants to do. If that makes sense.
I took a deep dive into this character. I played him for a couple weeks and learned a bunch of stuff about him, and I did not like Garrus at all in MK11. I thought the idea of him was cool, but he was so top tier. I'm just like salty for life. Like when they announced him
Right.
for this game, I'm like, I don't even care. Like 0% hype during the Garrus trailer, but I really, really like him in this game. His pokes suck. I feel like if they gave him better pokes, did something with like forward 2, 1+3 string. He's got tick throws on it and stuff, but people just kind of like mash out of it because it's high follow ups. And if that was like
Right.
scarier, like just trying to think to myself, how does a character with all these tools, how does he not play the game well? He just seems like he's got a little bit of everything, but he's missing something. Like we were just talking about, like he needs something like what just happened with as little as what happened to Scorpion, or as much as what they gave to Rain. Not as like what they gave to Rain. He
Right.
doesn't need cancels and stuff, and he probably doesn't need that much of an adjustment. If Burrito Voorhees is listening, perhaps he can leave a comment because he's really insightful about this sort of stuff.
Yeah, he's definitely super intelligent when it comes to fighting games.
He really thinks about it, and I like the way he talks about it.
All right, so I think C tier for Geras seems fair.
Yeah,
And then,
I think I don't know. I don't think anyone disagree with that.
then we got Havoc, and Havoc is in a tier of his own. I should have just named this Havoc, but
Yeah,
I didn't
you
want to.
could. It's not too late. It's the
He's
big
just
reveal. Change it right now.
okay. I'll change it right now. He doesn't
All
play
right.
the game well at all. Like I don't know. He doesn't have a discerning game plan. You know, like I don't really know what he's supposed to do. he's he's got some good moves. The tether seems like something that should be like kind of part of his core game plan, but he's slow, which I will say that even though Havoc is on the bottom of my tier list, I do think him versus Quan Chi is a 5-5 matchup because they're both kind of slow, and Havoc can just kind of take advantage of the things that Quan Chi really can't, and it's hard for him to zone him out because he's got that roll, which is kind of annoying.
Imagine if he could gel anything off of his down 4. Just such a good button other than the hit advantage, how much scarier he would be with
Yeah,
just even that.
yeah,
I
he's
don't
just
feel like Wise Gemini was like had like a wish list of like 2 things that they'd just be happy with, right? If I only just got these 2 things, and one of them was hit advantage on down 4. Let me actually see if I can find the other thing.
yeah, and
But
I mean,
go on.
yeah, like the range on his moves, he's got some decent mix with like that low and the throw, and then he can also just stagger it and punish your armor unless you're Kung Lao. So I mean, He does have some cool stuff, and his counter zoning is really annoying. Like if he gets one of those big kind of neck cracking projectiles on the screen, he can kind of just follow it in, or the enhanced neoplasm. Like both of those are good for him to kind of traverse. So like he has some good tools, and his redesign is super cool.
He's not, but I mean, if you pop that projectile, I guess it depends on the range that he uses it at. Full screen, he's not closing. He can use that to kind of close distance, but he's not going to be on you by the time you're blocking that.
No,
Um,
I don't know. He has tools, but like they don't really mesh well together, from what I've found.
so Sonic Fox said that they make back two a little bit faster, so that's what's really good for it advancing mid,
Right?
or has the potential to be really good. Just needs to be a little bit faster, but that thing can be really smothering in the right hands, like someone playing Havoc, like very very well,
Right.
very perfectly and stuff. Oh man, because that leads to the other little kind of built-in mix-up in the string and stuff. Sonic also said faster armor and forward 4 would gel into the projectile. White Gemini was just give me hit advantage, allow me to just gel anything off of down 4. Little faster startup on back 2, so they agree on those two things. And then make his 2-2 and 2-1 strings gel.
It's interesting that like the lower tier characters are some of the ones that have remained the most untouched for the game's life so far.
I know.
Really weird.
They just. Do you think it's a popularity thing? Like, if more people were playing this character,
I mean, that's kind of
do you
some
think they're
inception.
not as invested in Havoc, or they just don't know what to do without just making him broke?
Yeah, I mean, maybe no one's playing him because they keep losing. But I mean, there's a casual crowd too in invasions and stuff, right? So like maybe his design just isn't very fun. I don't know. Like I've only fought against him. I haven't tried to use him. So it could be something like that. And they give him kind of a big overhaul too and change a bunch of things and whatnot. I don't know. I'm not really sure.
I played
what their
around with him
thoughts.
a bunch. He could use some other, like his torso spin, that last hit drops, and then it's like MK11 breakaway. They just stand up and full combo punish you,
Oh, yeah, I've
for
seen
the
that.
crime of ending your combo. And it's hard to get consistent. It was for me. It's like little things like that. But he's fun, and he's more fun than I thought that he would be, actually, hands on and learning a couple things. He's a really cool character. I hope he gets some love.
Moving on to Johnny Cage. Johnny Cage I have in competitor is going to yell at me for this, but I have him in the S tier. I'm not going to really order these in any way. Like he did get some nerfs or whatever, but like, man, does he ever play this game well? And he meshes with so many cameos. Like you can use pretty much any cameo with him. And like he's got pressure, he's got damage. Like if he gets his star power, I was watching Texas Showdown last night. And like, man, like he got star power combos. He's hitting like 540 damage with Chameleon, like one or two bars. I can't remember, but that is just insane damage for a character who has a billion different ways to open you up. But I think Johnny Cage plays this game very, very well, and I think his nerfs that he got were kind of a slap on the wrist. But again,
What do you have to say to people that are like, well, he's got to work his way in? Because you play a zoner, right? That's a lot of the
course,
counter argument I see to put him lower is the work he's got to put in to get in, and he's a low health, and the plus frames aren't that bad.
yeah, I mean he's definitely not as oppressive as he was before, and he does have a bit of a weakness is that he has to get in. But zoning isn't very strong in this game. Like even as the premier zoner of like Quan Chi, like keeping him out he's gonna get in at some point, and if he does, it's like GG's. So like the only really zoning threat I see to him is Quan Chi, and Quan Chi is a slower character. So once he gets in, it's like it's classic zoner versus rushdown, right? In that aspect, I don't really see anybody else zoning Johnny Cage. I mean, I'm trying to think of who else would even do that. Like maybe Sindel, maybe, but I don't really know. But I just
good meter balancing with a Serena pick with the P shooter to kind of weave in there too. But
yeah, that's
use
true.
it seldom enough that you keep, because it's got the fast cooldown, so you just don't want to be mashing it to.
And even in that zoner matchup, if you pick Chameleon, who already works in a billion different ways with every single character, you get the J glow, and then you don't even have to worry about projectiles. Just meander your way in. So that's kind of how the game works.
Right.
So I'm totally comfortable putting him up in the S tier. And the same kind of idea, I think, with Kenshi as well. Kenshi just plays this game really well. Sento is so obnoxious. Got a bit of a slap on the wrist as far as the as far as the chip damage and stuff goes, but a solid character outside of that too. Similar to Johnny Cage, I would say probably Kenshi can get zoned a little easier than Johnny, especially if he gets caught in his secondary stance, where he goes after Ken, or Sento is called. It's a little bit harder for him to move around. He doesn't have that obnoxious kind of run-in move, but most of the time that doesn't seem to be how it goes. Not sure how your feelings on Kenshi are. I think he's one of the stronger ones in the game. I don't think he's like broke or anything. I see Tekken Master talking about that a lot. Oh, people are up playing Kenshi and blah blah blah. But I mean, I don't think he's broke by any means. He's just a really solid character in this particular game.
Yeah, so he plays the game really well. It's the opposite of what we were just talking about, and he plays it in a way that no other character can.
Yeah, really
because
does.
of Sento. I literally don't have anything else to say about Kenshi except for I'm bracing for the down players based on what you just said. I can't wait.
Brace yourself. Was that meme, that brace yourself or whatever?
Oh yeah, the Game of Thrones meme.
Katana's an interesting one because one of my teammates on STB, Retro, has been absolutely wrecking with Katana. I will say that some of the setups that he was using with Katana Jax are just like full health bar setups, and if you don't have a breaker, like, good luck, that kind of thing.
I have seen her in top 5 conversations because of that, right? That's
Yeah.
what always comes up, Jax.
Yeah, exactly. So like, part of me wants to put her in S tier, but I'm not really sure. Like those setups are absolutely insane, but I'm not sure that I really want to put her on the same page as the other characters in S tier.
Why not?
I don't know. I feel like all of those stuff.
She has the most obnoxious zoning and like the best mid in the game, and what you
She
were
does
just
have
talking
the
about,
best
full
mid.
health bar setups with Cam, and it's so Jax will enable that specific sort of thing, but she has a lot of synergy with a lot of cameos, which I think makes her more versatile. Which is so funny, like because back in the stress test and the beta, I don't feel like any of the cameos really super suited her. Like Sonya was
Yeah.
serviceable and stuff, but everyone was talking about how low tier she was and how boring she was, except for like a couple people. But man, she's got some great combo synergy, and you just need to look at Retro's Twitter to realize it, and just the variety of cameos, just doing the most fucked up things.
And it's
oh my gosh,
it's crazy because like Retro is like the only katana that I'm really seeing around. Like I've run into the odd one here and there in Combat League, but they're not doing anything nearly on the same level as Retro. So I think Retro has really kind of cemented this character. And you know what? After everything, I forgot about how good her mid is. I hate that mid so much. I'm fine putting her in S tier now. I think I was kind of on the fence just because I don't see a lot of katanas, but I think she's not exactly the easiest one to just let me pick up this broke strategy and do it, you know? Like, it takes a lot of time and effort and the setups and the knowledge. But once you get all that, oh boy, have fun not playing the game.
right? She's another character like Ermac and Gearus and things that Quan, character that you can grow into, and you're like always learning something new about him. There's always something quirky, and you know, with every new cameo release, you know, what is it giving me this time with her little trap setups and other sorts of things? Like she's a cool character, and I think she's really strong.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I was just a little on the fence by the lack of katanas, but you know, now that I think about it, Kung Lao, I have Kung Lao in A tier. He plays the game really well. He has, I think, in my opinion, one of the best armored moves in the game because it's safe. You can't really punish it. And then he has like cameos he can use to back it up. I will say I think he struggles a little bit in the synergy department. Like he's kind of locked to a couple cameos to really like kind of make him shine, in my opinion.
And without cameo, he's probably the worst character in the game.
He's pretty close to that. Like he has a couple things going for him. Like he has like that kind of quicker-ish overhead and like a couple fast-hitting moves that can shred some armor. But I mean, I just think he's just so cameo reliant that it keeps him out of the S tier for me. I think he's still solid, still really good, still totally viable. Just not quite in that S tier as far as my experience with the character has been. Yeah,
I would agree with that, and that seems consistent with what I'm seeing around. I think that's general sentiment is in line with that.
So moving on to Lee May, and I'm really sad that I didn't like the design of this character in this game. I have her in the C tier, kind of with Gearus. she doesn't really have a clear game plan. Like she has some really cool stuff and some like insane plus frames, but she's just so full of gaps that like, and really to get damage, I've only ever seen her with Scorpion. I don't think I've ever seen anybody use any other cameo with her other than Scorpion. She hits hard with Scorpion, give her that. But I mean, you're kind of forced into one cameo. I feel like in a game where cameos are the game, I feel like that's not a great design, and I feel like she needs something.
I'm curious if that's your train of thought. I'm curious where you're going to place a couple other characters. No spoilers, but I'm going to be scouting for that.
Good, call me, keep me honest. I will move things if you bring something up. Like I said, I was almost put Katana in A tier, but your little inputs there, like, why would you even do that? What's wrong with you?
Well, I'm not. We were kind of talking about a little bit before how hard it is. Like when you make a tier list like this, do you take just the strongest cameo into consideration and only strongest cameo? And if they are really strong with only one cameo, but with other cameos they are quite a bit weaker, where does that put the character overall? Is it top tier because they're really synergistic cameo makes them very powerful, or do you put them somewhere in the middle because the law of averages would put them there?
Yeah, and I think that's kind of what the difficulty has been with everyone trying to do tier lists, because I was thinking about different ways to do it, and I'm like, well, maybe we just do it without cameos. I'm like, well, that doesn't really make sense because cameos are the game. So like that literally wouldn't make any sense, and it would completely change the tier list. So the way that I've kind of been looking at this is kind of that the cameos that synergize with more like the most cameos, that gives them the more options and the more ways to play the game, which is kind of would make them a top tier. Or they have one cameo that makes them absolutely ridiculous to play against, i.e., for example, Kenshi. Kenshi works really well with, say, like Frost or Sub-Zero, because he can get the Sento out fairly easily. All he has to do is basically land a hit. So, although he doesn't have a great synergy, the synergy that he does have with a couple cameos makes him far and away better than other characters that might have better synergy but can't do dirtier stuff. Does that make sense? Is that a little bit too convoluted of a way to kind of go about this?
No, I think that there's no good way to go about it. And so there's no way to go about it without it being convoluted, at least that level of convolution. Or, you know,
That was
I
that was
don't.
the most politest way to say yes. Yes, that is way too convoluted, but there's no other way to do it. So I don't know. That's how I think about it. And characters at the bottom who are just barely playing the game with one cameo, Lee May and Garrus. I don't even know what cameo Garrus would use. Sub-Zero, maybe? I have no idea.
Well, he was really strong with Kung Lao, and then Kung Lao got nerfed
Right.
again, which kind of, it affects that.
Okay, we got a little sidetracked there. Moving on to Liu Kang. I think Liu Kang is in the A tier. I think super strong character, can do a lot of different things in the game and meshes well with a lot of different cameos. Nothing that seems too overpowered or broken with him. His throw combos with Kung Lao and Wataru are kind of annoying, but they don't hit very hard, so that's kind of the balance there, I think.
He's already has such a strong strike throw game. It just makes the throw option that much harder. Like you don't want to take the throw, like so even
Exactly.
the throw hurts.
And then you have the
Um,
mind game because like it's always off the back throw, right? So I'm just like, okay, well I'll just always tech back throw, and then I'll never have to deal with that. And then they start forward throwing you, and it's like, well, that's annoying, So, but he's I don't know. He's not on the same tier as the ones in the S tier, in my opinion. I think he's super solid, looks like a super fun character to play, and not his pressure is annoying and good, but I mean that's kind of always been Liu Kang. I say this, I think pretty much every time I make a tier list because he's always up here, and it's like that's a character that your grandma can pick up and play. Like I'm pretty sure that was a quote from Ed Boon in like one of his interviews like years and years ago. Like he was just wants a character that's like simple, effective, and not overcomplicated. And I think that's exactly what Liu Kang is, which fits perfectly with the main theme of the game, with him being the designer of time and all that kind of stuff. So I think I'm happy with him there. I wouldn't put him any higher, certainly not lower.
right, he's got this probably the strongest, some of the strongest zoning in the game, and then the really annoying staggers and strike throw. It's just the kind of spot in the middle. Is
Yep.
his weakness, the in between range.
Yeah, the little footsies range. So moving on to one where we're going to get some input from you on is Moliner. And of course, in the tournament scene, we've seen Hourglass of Rain just absolutely dominate, even in taking out Sonic Fox in one of the, I'm not sure if it was a pro event or what, but it was some online thing. And I believe they're playing in Texas Showdown today, so that'll be interesting
Right,
to see.
this weekend. So
Yeah.
I'm really interested to see how that translates to online. And if you want to learn Melina, uh, Hourglass of Rain has it's a VOD from the Twitch stream with a really big breakdown and explaining a lot of the setups, and even goes over like the strongest cameos. Uh, Hourglass is a Kung Lao user, which is really good synergy with Melina because of the you can hold the buzz saw low hat, and then she's got the overhead in her 1-2 string, and
Right.
it's really easy for her to set up that little fun to blockable, and she's got a lot of other stuff, and went over that very thoroughly in that video. I think that she is not without her issues. I don't
Okay.
even know where I would put her. I don't think she's like an S tier character, but she is an A tier character in my opinion.
That's
We were talking
exactly.
about in the Discord like a week or two ago. We were talking about, like, say they did give us a version with no cameos, or say the game did come out with no cameos. I feel like Melina, they wouldn't have to give her much else. They probably would, but um, her flaws seem like very obvious what they want to be covered by the cameo, which would be like a full screen projectile and also something to cover the flawless block gap in 1-2, which turns into a full combo punish.
Shujinko gets
And
her full screen projectiles.
yeah, so
Just saying.
fucked up.
I'm just saying.
That doesn't surprise me. She's a menace, right? This character in the right hands is so classic Melina, like just super obnoxious staggers, and she's got strong strike throw, and she's got kind of like potato mix. If you just want to go, you knock somebody down with a forward four, and then the opponent's guessing between the overhead, which breaks armor, which you lose your turn on, or the plus on block low, and you don't get anything off of any of those. It's set forward the sequence over and over and over again until they guess right, or the
Yeah.
delay wake up, or whatever it is. And that forward four, it's like being thrown almost like every single time that you eat it. That adds up so fast, and so I don't even think she's got some complexities, and some of her combo paths are like a little bit weird, which makes her maybe not so welcoming.
Right.
People that are intimidated by stuff like that. But as far as like game plan and things like that, she can be very. I mean, as you know, she can be really obnoxious.
She
You fought
can.
against plenty.
I've fought against a ton of them, and they're very annoying. So yeah, I'm fine with her being in the A tier. I don't think although she's winning stuff, it's very, very clear that there's a lot of effort going into those and making the right reads and making calculated risks. So I think she's very weighted in that way. So
And
yeah,
if you were doing this ordered, is this an ordered tier list? So
this
is
is
Ashra
not.
number one in your opinion, or is this just broad stroke tier stuff?
No, this is not. This I'm just putting them
Okay.
in as they're alphabetically here. I'm not sure I could actually rank that, but maybe when we get to the end of it, I'll have another look and see. But yeah, I'm not sure I could do that at this point. We'll see.
Okay.
Moving on to Natara, and this, in my opinion, is going to be the first B tier character, who I think is just like a solid, right in the middle kind of character. You know, she has some clear game plans. She has lots of things she can do. She can't necessarily execute it the best, but when she does, it works. And she has good damage, but she's just not on the level as the A and the S tier characters. I don't see too many Nataras around, but when I do, it seems like, again, when her stuff works, it works, but she does have to take some risks to get things going, especially against certain characters and in certain matchups. I can see there's probably a couple matchups that are probably not very fun for her. So that's where I kind of have her in this. I don't know if you've messed around with Natara at all. That totally seems like a hater character, but I'm not
I
sure.
have a little bit. I played against Koala's Natara a bunch this morning and stuff too, and Mason's played the character, and I think she's another character that suffers from, like, her design is really cool and unique. She's definitely not a bad character. She just doesn't play this game as well as other characters do. So that puts her into a lower position. I feel like in this game, you need kind of a strong ground game, and she's designed to not have one, right? Because she's supposed to be in
She's
the
the
air,
air
and it's
character.
just that's not stronger than that's not an advantage, really. Like it's an advantage if you want to, do that sort of stuff, and you want to dash cancels, and that's how you like to mix and stuff. But there's a lot more
Yeah,
risk when it comes to that sort of stuff, and I feel like that's what a lot of people, the feedback they give when they place her lower is, weak ground game. Even if she's supposed to be in the air, like she can't keep up in this game.
not quite,
So
not
not
quite
not bad.
balanced.
She's not Havoc,
No, she's
or
not
anything like
having.
that,
No,
right?
definitely
She's
not.
just doesn't play the game as well as other characters.
So Omniman, I have also in that same tier. I think the character is good. Seems to be a little bit locked down to the Kung Lao cameo, unless I'm missing something. That's pretty much the only cameo I see outside of Chameleon, but Chameleon is just another tier of cameo.
Chameleon works with everybody.
Yeah, there's not a character in this game Chameleon doesn't work with. But I feel like he's got a very clear, concise game plan. When he gets it going, he gets it going. He can be quite unsafe in the things that he wants to do. And he's a big knowledge check character. You just need to know how to scout for his big overhead, what moves he's going to do, how to properly whiff punish him if he's doing his weird teleport shenanigans. He's a big knowledge check character, hits hard, his game plan works. He's got some mix with Kung Lao, but he just feels like he's kind of stuck in this one kind of cameo, unless you want to play Chameleon, and his game plan is pretty obvious and easy to avoid if you know the matchup, but certainly not on the same levels as Garrus, Li Mei, and Havoc. I'm not sure if that sounds accurate to what you've played, Hatyr, but that's been kind of my experience with Omniman so far.
Yeah, I can't think of anybody really that would argue with that. Kind of just like right up the middle for like what you talked about. I think he's a really good example, and we've talked about this a lot of times, right? Even going back to Injustice 2, and you see like a trailer for a new DLC character, and it's like, man, this is going to be so broke. Oh, I'm already annoyed, and I don't even, the character's not even out yet, just having to deal with this. And then they come out and it's like, it's not so bad. You learn the matchup, and it's like, okay, yeah, I was definitely more in my head making those sorts of assessments. And Omniman's like one of those characters to me. But he's a big old teddy bear. Once you get to know him, big old teddy bear. He's not that threatening after all.
No, very cool design. I like how true to the show they made him, even with his skins. That's very cool. I was not expected to like that character. He does.
I think he fits into the game well. He doesn't feel like out of place.
We gotta talk about this motherfucker Peacemaker. If there is a most annoying tier to fight against in this game, it's Peacemaker. He is so obnoxious.
They put Mr. Potato Head in this game and made it look like John Cena.
Right? That's exactly like, man, there's just so much that this character just gets away with. And I will say they made some balance changes to him on the last patch that were definitely needed for sure.
It like took the edge off.
Yeah, but he's still obnoxious.
Strong.
He's still obnoxious. I don't know if he's S tier obnoxious anymore. He's definitely unsafe on a lot of things, and taking away that infinite, armor on the force field was kind of a good change. I don't really know if I want to put him in the S tier. If I believed in middle tiers, I'd put him in one between S and A, but I think I'm going to put him in the A tier. But he's S tier as far as fucking annoying goes to fight. Just super unga bunga. Let me just torpedo into you, which should be unsafe, but it's not with certain cameos, or you're just not ready for it because it's so fast. But he does have, if you know your punishes, again, blah blah blah. As someone who would be trying to tell somebody how to properly fight against them, just let them hang themselves. It will happen eventually, but just super duper annoying. But with those balance changes, I don't think he's top.
He's so scary in capable hands, like Mighty Unjust playing Peacemaker and stuff. I would say Peacemaker's a really good character recommendation. Like if you're just trying to get into the game, you're not sure who to play, and you want to be like Unga Bunga, that's how they kind of designed this character. And that's not even meant to be an insult. I feel like that's totally how they designed his kit, is to be able to do stuff like that and kind of get away with it. You will pay the price for it sometimes, but just so many options, so much going on. And like I said, another character that you can grow into, because once you start learning about the game and you want to play less Unga Bunga and a little bit more explicitly, and then once you have those two things down, it's just a mix-up, right? Like he's a cool character. I don't like playing against him.
Just the way he announces moves too is just like,
I just don't think it's a very fun matchup. Like he's a cool character design and stuff, but he's cool. I think that he's strong. I think A tier is fine.
Yeah. Quan Chi, we're going on a little bit of a roller coaster thing here. Quan Chi, I also think, is an A tier.
Down player alert. Down player alert.
If I put him in C, I could put him in S and then I'm a not player, how this thing goes. I feel like I can't win either way. So but I do feel like he's an A tier character. Like, the armor setups in the corner, like you can put up, if you have 2 bars, you want to spend 2 bars, you push the push away portal and the armor portal and just sit behind the push away one until your armor's active, then go in and mix. Like, his zoning is far and away the best in the game. He just has a very glaring weakness that he's slow. Once you get on him, he also doesn't do much damage either, like combo damage. Most of his damage has to come from specials. So he has a very
He
glaring
does okay.
weakness.
Your meterless BNB is what, 30% or 29%?
Yeah, about that, like 310-ish damage. Without
Okay.
without cameos, it goes a little bit less than that, but I mean, most cameos can net him somewhere in the lower 300s. So I mean, it's all right. But again, he's supposed to get his damage from elsewhere. But another character that just meshes with a lot of different cameos too. Like obviously, I use Shujinko with him, which is viable now. I don't think it was viable before, but obviously now Shujinko changes were nice. But I can't really think of any cameos that he doesn't really mesh well with. I guess ones with slow cooldowns, but he's just a solid, good character. You just have to know how to play him right. But I just don't think he has enough dirt to be an S tier. That's with a glaring weakness like the one he has. It's keeping him out of the top, in my opinion.
And he's got his like frame traps and special little things that standing 4 can punish that nobody else can punish, and standing 4 and Akia's blades if you're a Serena player for full screen combos and things like that. But I agree, he does. You say you put up the armor portal and you go in and you're ready to mix, but like really, what's the mix? You're holding back 2 versus I'm blocking a back 3 and I'm just
Right.
waiting out the portal if I'm being patient. And that's like how I hear Ketchup talking about the characters. Like, well, I mean, it's not that threatening of a mix. It's kind of scary because there's stuff on the screen, but just block it. Like, and it's like really reactable and stuff. It's not as dirty as it seems. I think people get really, myself included, you get really overwhelmed.
Oh, for
Right.
sure. Yep.
So I agree. I don't think he's S tier and he's strong. And I bet some people would even argue that he's on the lower end of that. If this was ordered, he'd be like, high B, low A ish.
Yeah.
And Melina's probably around there as well as if this was being ordered.
No. Yeah, that makes sense. And yeah, I think that's kind of. I don't want to spend too much time on Quan, but I'm the Quan Chi guy, so I mean,
Right.
I feel that's a good explanation for why he's there.
I don't disagree. He's a handful. He definitely has his drawbacks. Those slow buttons.
Now, Raiden, I have to theory craft a little bit because he got some nerfs, specifically his Storm Cell is now seemingly unsafe, but he's still a solid character otherwise. Like, they just kind of forced you to use a lot of his other things. Like, they made some changes to Razzle Dazzle, which I kind of went in and I used that move, and I'm not really sure what they want people to do with it now, but they added some frame changes to it, so I don't know if
That
there's
seems
something
to
viable.
be that seems to be the question of the patch. Like, yeah,
Yeah,
thanks for the change. What am I supposed to do with this again?
it does no
Do you think there's
damage.
hidden tech? Just people haven't approached it the right way?
I mean, maybe. I mean, yeah. There's so many things like this in this game that I'm like, I wonder what NRS knows that we don't. Like, there's another character I'm going to talk about. I don't want to spoil it, but like, maybe there's like some things we haven't discovered yet, and like NRS and like the QA room is like screaming at us, like, you need to do this thing. Why is nobody doing this thing? And like,
Yeah,
why are you saying this character's bad when you're not doing the thing?
I agree. I bet that happens all the time. It's not like they can be like, "Hey, idiots, why don't you try this?" Like,
Right?
what's that new throw brutality? And people say they've known about it before, but it went like a little viral, like this last week or the week before, where you throw them at the camera, like sort of thing.
Yeah, you
And the
hold
game's
up
been
to.
out for what, like 8 months or something, 7 months.
Yeah, I
Even if you
just
say you knew that before, I mean,
yeah.
that's fine. But as far as like common knowledge and actually seeing it around, that's like 2 weeks old at this point.
Yeah,
So,
I thought they were added that in with the patch. I don't remember ever seeing that
oh,
before.
maybe they did, and maybe I'm just smoking crack rocks. That's probably way more plausible
I mean,
than hidden brutality that no one's figured out.
I mean, it's possible, but I thought they added it in with the patch. I don't know for sure.
Maybe.
But outside of like the changes and
Even
stuff,
then, it's still hidden.
it's still hidden. You're right.
It wasn't in the patch notes.
That's true. There's a few things I found that weren't in the patch notes, actually. I'll have to make a whole video on that. That's probably enough to talk about there.
You should, yeah.
I'm going to keep Raiden in the S tier, though, because he has really good mix-ups, really good damage, again, meshes with a ton of cameos, and I don't think the Storm Cell nerf was enough to keep him out of this. Good mobility with the teleport and the Superman, which I miss his gibberish. That's definitely a nerf to Raiden. I wish when Shujinko does the Superman, because that's a new thing they added, I wish he would do the old Raiden gibberish. That would be such a nice little touch. I would love that so much.
That would be super funny. Like how he made him the ghost when you do Ermac's lift.
Such a nice
And
touch. I love that.
yeah.
So I'm going to keep Raiden in S tier. I really don't see anything that he has that makes him lower than that. He plays the game amazingly well and belongs up there in my opinion. Moving on to Rain. I really haven't seen too much tech or like knowledge about Rain's changes and whatnot. So it's really hard for me to say. Like before the changes, I would have put him in B tier, but I think that maybe he's probably upped to A. I've kind of messed around with his stuff and like his new moves, like he has that like new um with punishing move, the back three or whatever it was. But I mean it's unsafe on block, so I mean kind of a hard read on that one. And then the other string they gave him looks like it's safe on block, so that's good. But I don't know how good his cancels are. I don't know how if he's getting any more damage.
They're good. You have to move him up at least one. Otherwise you're a criminal.
Okay. My rain knowledge is a little, at least on the new update too. So I don't know. Like, is he super plus on a lot of his cancels, or like how?
I think
how's
it
that
just
work?
gives him, it kind of like completes his game plan, the cancels, and then he can actually whiff punish now. I think is another one. I haven't looked into it a lot, but just the chatter that I've seen around and stuff. And he's another one of those characters that's like in top 3 conversation for a lot of. This is like top player, whatever current meta sort of stuff. But we're also only a couple weeks into the changes, so we'll see how the dust settles. But
True.
I think he is accepted as a very, very strong character right now. Like those were really good changes.
Well, it's good to see because I know that a lot of people are super happy about that character's inclusion. So kind of feel like similar to what I was saying about Shujinkydink, like they finally added him to the game. You can finally play him. So here's one that might be a bit of a hot take on my part, but I've seen a lot of people putting Reiko in S tier, and I really don't think that's the case. I think that he has all the tools. He's a good character. Maybe suffers a little bit with the cameo synergy aspect of things, I think. Like, he has cameos that are definitely good, like Tremor and Darius and whatnot. He's probably the only one that's good with Darius right now, to be honest. Poor Darius. I just don't see anything that pushes him up to that S tier, especially when they changed Shujinkydink, that you could just... Everyone has a mid command grab against Reiko now that ticks when he doesn't even have any tick throws, which is hilarious. So they kind of added a hard counter to him in that aspect. But going back to that comment about how Shao Kahn doesn't necessarily have that, I'm not sure you could really factor that into his tier placement or not. That's kind of where my mind goes whenever everyone's like, oh, Reiko's S tier. I'm like, well, just pick Shujinkydink and you get a mid command grab against him, and Shuriken's on top of that. So.
And tick grabs that he himself doesn't have.
Yeah, so I just think they just added a hard counter to him in the game, which again, he's still a great character.
But that's one cameo for one matchup. Like you're forcing your opponent. It's great if they already play Shujinkydink.
Right.
And the threat of Shujinkydink is definitely this is why it's so hard to be like, yeah, if they choose Shujinkydink, you can turn a favorable matchup to an unfavorable matchup with just that decision.
Yeah, exactly. And
but for all the other 17 cameos, he's like way stronger than that.
Yeah, and I think he does well against the majority of the cameo cast. I just think that similar to how I was saying, like for Kenshi, where you have one cameo that just brings you up that much more, I think Reiko is an example of doing that exact same thing the other way, which is kind of why I've dropped him down to the A tier. And again, I feel like people instantly such a dogpile and I'm saying Reiko is unviable and no one should ever pick him ever. But I'm just saying
that was like our early game thoughts, and he hasn't really even had any adjust. I think he's another one of those cameos that he wasn't punished because he doesn't use Kung Lao. He wasn't punished because he doesn't use Striker. He's been, all the changes to the cameos have been inconsequential to him. And once they moved on to Tremor, thanks for the extra 100 health. Yeah. And I still got to convert off my command grab while people around him are dropping because their high synergy was with cameos like Striker or Kung Lao, which are weaker now. Right. So just by, cause and effect, they naturally go up as others are, going down. So I think he's probably one of those characters, and that's why a lot of people have him in S tier strictly with the consideration of him paired with Tremor, which you say you're not doing here, right? Something like that is not a consideration. So yeah, exactly. I think that makes sense. A tier makes sense.
So moving on to Reptile, and this is an interesting run because he did get some changes. I don't think this is necessarily what Reptile needed, to be honest. But it definitely helped him out a bit. And I think he'd go from the C tier into the B tier, in my opinion. I don't think he's really that much better. Like when I think of like him on par with like the A tier characters, I don't really see him as the same tier. But again, as you were saying, it's not really, there's no really like good or bad, like unviable characters, I feel. And I know that Honeybee was even saying, I think we mentioned this last time, that well, he's not a bottom 3 character anymore. So like,
Right.
but not really praising, saying that he's gotten that what he needed. So I kind of
I mean, he still has to play neutral the way that Reptile needs to. Nothing changed as far as that's concerned, and I feel like that's still where some of the fuzziness of that character is.
yeah,
You know,
he has
that turn
tools.
people away from playing him. You've got to play it a certain sort of, and he does feel funky. But the other adjustments, like if you ever tried him before, and you're like, how do I land this combo? It just drops every time, or the gravity's so weird. They made
Right.
good adjustments to make things consistent for things like that.
So that's good, and I feel comfortable putting him there. I'm not. I don't think I would second guess that too much at all, and don't really have much more to say than that. He moved from where I would have put probably in the C tier before, just up a tier. And I think that's totally fair. Scorpion, young Scrompion here, I do have in the C tier, even with the changes that they made to him. They gave them what the Scorpion players wanted, which were mid, like some decent mids. But oh no, there's a gap there. I still don't really see him playing the game any better than he did before, given the tools that he has, and even with the new changes, I still think he kind of struggles a bit. He, again, doesn't necessarily have a clear game plan. It's just standard Scorpion stuff: spear, teleport, a little bit of Hellfire. There's nothing that really makes him pop, or that would no cameo that particularly works well with him to increase his game plan. Have you messed around with Scorpion at all? I've played him a little bit
I
in the
have.
lab, so I could be
I
way out
have.
to
He
lunch
looks
here.
like he's super fun. And when they did the first combat cast, for him, before the game came out, he was definitely on my short list of characters I wanted to try. He's a little too dry for me. But I have a question for you.
Sure.
When you're dealing with Scorpion 4-3, which isn't great, right? I mean, it's a mid. It doesn't have like great range and stuff. But so before they gave him the forward 3-4 and all he had was forward 3-2, what did you do? Did you just duck and punish it? Or did you just respect forward 3 as a stagger and you ended up blocking the high and they got away with it, or
In
what?
It depends a lot on the players, and I usually try and read the players to see how risky they're going to go with it. And of course the cameo too. Like you can have the odd cameo that will kind of protect you from that whiff. Most of the
Right,
time,
but if the risk is moved from being crouched on a high to eating a full combo to maybe making your opponent spend a bar of meter to punish that gap, which everyone else is susceptible to, and then
for sure.
now you've got the bait game. That just makes 4-3 even stronger, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And then they can't duck the high. They at least eat the mid, and some cameos will let him convert. He's not going to get a lot, and I don't think they wanted him to have a lot, right? That's not like a 500 damage cash out or something. That's to keep your opponent in check for the audacity of disrespecting your forward 3, right? Just to, a little bit more than a slap on the wrist. You got to make it hurt, but you're not getting like, 40% or something off of it. But I think it added a lot more to it. People were like way too dismissive of it just because of the gap. And I get it. People don't like gaps, and that's
It's fine,
stuff
I
that
guess.
people talk about a lot in this game. But if your opponent spends a bar of meter punishing a gap, and yeah, if it kills you, that sucks. And that's definitely where
That's the mind game.
that should change up the mind game. Exactly. In those sorts of health situations where you can't take that. But before then, if they do that, now they don't have a breaker. So if you block that, you bait it, you block it, you full combo punish, they can't break because they just spent a bar on the armored reversal. And so it just becomes, whether you think that's a fun mind game or not, a gap does not, neuter the whole thing. Look at how many gaps Quan has, and
Yeah.
he still gets away with all sorts of shit, right? And every once in a while you'll eat one when people get tired of your shit or you get a little bit too predictable.
Yep.
They'll throw it out there. But I don't think it's something you have to worry about constantly because people want to use their meter on other things, even if they know that it can be punished.
And to that point, I think that the forward 3 mind games with Scorpion are good. I just think that's really all he has as far as offense. Like,
I think he's a good cat. He's got one of the best whiff punishers in the game, standing too. If it were up to me but this is your tier list, right? I would have him with Reptile, at least in B tier. There's no way. Of all of the ninjas, I don't think that Scorpion's the weakest one. I guess we haven't gotten to the other two ninjas yet,
No.
but I don't know. I think that you're not giving him maybe enough credit, and I think it's just because he's not a super popular character. And when we do see him, he's another like Liu Kang, right? So when you do run into people that aren't playing the game super competitively,
There's just so
uh,
many ways he can kill himself.
yeah.
But I think that plays
But
to the low tierness of it. You know, like it's
in the right hands, he does not have. He's got kind of a dry kit, but it's not a bad kit. It's not a super awesome, which is why he's not like S tier or A tier or something. But I don't think he's
I don't know.
quite down there.
I'm holding my stance on
Okay.
this one. We'll let the comments
Hey, I'm not
blow
trying to
me
tell
up.
you what to do. I'm not telling you what
No,
to do.
we're good.
You let us know down in the comments below.
Oh, they
Give
will.
Dink that engagement, and
They
you
will.
let him know what you
What you think of my
Scorpion's placement.
wow? That's my hot take, I guess. Shang Tsung. So this is kind of what I was alluding to earlier with what does NRS know that we don't? Because everyone unanimously agrees that he's not very good.
Right.
But you have a character who has the capacity to turn into any character they're facing at any point in time, with a particular Kameo who can steal moves from other opponents. And I feel like just the amount of creativity and things you could do switching back and forth between all these forms has to create some sort of a synergy or something good, right? Like,
It's too, I think it's too niche for this sort of thing because there's no consistency there unless you can rely on every character to give you. So you need to know B and Bs with every character, which is fine if you play this game enough and you lab against these characters. You're going to kind of like learn that stuff, at least some basic stuff. But I think just being able to do that on the fly and the lack of consistency across the cast, plus it takes resources, doesn't it? Doesn't he have to spend bar on that?
yeah, so you can do like, so here's one thing that's actually really good about him because he has that really annoying long combo that you don't like, and he can end that combo into a soul steal into, I think it's like plus 38 advantage or whatever.
That's the 2-bar one.
That's
though.
the 2-bar. And then so he'll start with basically doing whatever you want as your opponent against them. Like I did this one setup with Raiden where I had Shujinko and I did the combo, turned into Raiden, then did his forward 3, which has that overhead afterwards, used the Shujinko Raiden steal that's a low, and then mixed up the Raiden off of that. So like, not trying to say like, you know, I'm the most big brain, but that was a pretty big brain play, not gonna lie.
Right, and that's got some endorphin payoff, right? It takes a very
Big time.
particular sort of player. This is not like going to be broad appeal, which is probably why they made him the pre-order bonus character and not like core roster, maybe, or maybe that was just his spot in the story that made him do that.
I would
or made
want,
them make that decision.
I would love to see Shang Tsung main who is all in, who is doing this stuff. Because I see Shang Tsung mains out there, and either the character just isn't set up enough to do that, which I don't think is the case because I played Shang at the start of the game's life, and I really don't feel that. But I feel like they're just, maybe it's a little bit too much risk that people are willing to take to make that character work. Because Shang as a base character, I do think he's weak. Like I do have him in the C tier, but I also have yet to see anything to make me want to put him higher. I haven't seen anybody do all these things that I think about in my head that might work. So
there's not enough of a difference between old and young form, and it's like, if you don't want the horizontal fireball, what point is there to even being in young form?
and that's kind of how I viewed it too when I played him, is like, you want to be in old form like 90% of the time, and then young form is kind of just for like chip out, maybe catch them with the fast overhead, that kind of a thing.
There's a lot of potential since you can switch on the fly because it's tied to the stance switch. So you can start a combo in old and then you go into young for the middle part of it, then you switch back to old to end it, or vice, all that all turned around. And I think that's what they had in mind. There's just not there's some pieces missing that needs to bring that all together. And I think that's where the cool Shang stuff will be. And you can see people already experimenting with that. Like Arn Kranos and Video Games Yo, when they're playing Shang Tsung, is switching forms like mid combo to get the better version of the Ender or something in young form
Right.
or something like that. There needs to be a lot more things like that, I think, to make him not just good, but interesting.
I wouldn't be
more
surprised.
complex.
I wouldn't be surprised if he's one of the characters that gets moves added to him later on, especially to the young form, just to make the forms a little bit more, I
He
don't
could
know,
definitely use the
diverse.
treatment. Yep, he could use the reptile treatment.
We're going to take a bit of a hop here. General Shao, we're going back up to the A tier. I think he's a very solid character. I think that he is very, very scary in his axeless form with his safe on block mix-ups and pressure. And I think he gets a command grab as well for some meter, I believe. But yeah, and then he does really good damage. He has good synergy with a lot of cameos, but a glaring weakness in no projectile. I guess he has his low quake thing, but wouldn't really consider that very useful.
The most reactable projectile in the entire game.
Yeah, exactly. So I think he has a very glaring weakness that keeps him out of the S tier, but his offense is really, really good and has cameos that can kind of cover his weakness at least a little bit. So that's why I think he's a super fair A tier.
He's got to work. It's like you were saying, like when he doesn't have the axe, like that mix up, that's when the party starts.
Get the
And
party
everything
started.
up to that point, you better believe he's working for it, So I think that's fair, and it's not like his axe form is completely useless. It's a really cool take on like a stance character.
Yeah, I think there's not much of a discussion. I think we're both on the same page. I think it's pretty easy to put him where he is,
Yep.
Sindel, my god, this character frustrates me to no end. And I have her in S tier for sure, because the amount of craziness that she can do with different cameos, like we just saw in the Oceania Pro competition a couple weeks ago, the extent of the mix of Sindel and Cyrax in the corner. That was some of like the grossest.
Cyrax in the corner. Yep.
Yeah, like that's like, and even listening to the commentary, like once they kind of figure out what's happening, and like he's got like Waz had like a full health bar and like hit him with like a scream or something, and they're like, did he just die? Like, did he just lose? Did he just lose the game? And then just continues to get mixed.
Dude, that buff they put on Cyrax net is so nasty. That meter drain is brutal.
That's
you
huge.
Can't break it when you're in a position like that and your back's to the corner. Anyway, that totally won me over on the idea of Sindel Cyrax. I have seen it before, maybe not quite like that, but like last week I was complaining about how the skins are kind of like and some of their color choices, and he was going full Cyrax. So his Sindel had the yellow sort of skin. Nothing I would ever wear like in a million years, but I feel like it fits so well thematically. I'm kind of won over by the yellow, so I'm gonna retract that from last week's podcast and stuff too.
Yeah,
Sindel's sick. I don't think anyone could argue with her being in S tier. She's ridiculous.
Yeah, just so much synergy with so many different cameos. I mean, she's just absolutely busted. What
I want to say still on the Sindel Cyrax was like the bomb setups, because he was going
with
into
the
pressure,
throw,
but like ending. So he'd go into like the float and then end that block string with the air projectile, which thrusts her backwards, and then release the bomb. So she's out of the way and she doesn't get hit by it. And then he converts off of it. And it was the same thing on the ground. He was doing it with the low fireball, because that makes her flip backwards when she does it, right? She does the little kick.
Yeah.
Or I guess that's the EX when she does the kick, but she does the little flip backwards. So getting out of range and releasing the bomb in the middle of all that stuff, just so swaggy. It's so cool. It
was definitely the coolest gameplay I've seen, and it's nothing new. Like Scars Unseen, if you know, has been posting stuff like that for months with Sindel and Cyrax. It was it was cool to see it all put together.
It gives me more faith in the idea of the cameo system overall. Seeing stuff like that, that's like a really good example of like the overall vision of the game, like coming together. I love it.
Smoke, I have an A tier. Another character who is really easy to kill himself if you're playing against an inexperienced person. But like, just meterless cancels are so obnoxious. And I know there are gaps in a lot of them, but just the amount of strings he can mix up.
They're never plus.
Yeah. So I mean, it's just the amount of strings that he has that are just kind of obnoxious. You never know when he's going to cancel from. When he hits you, he can cash out for really, really big damage. He can go invisible, teleport. I don't really know about his cameo synergy. I've seen him with a bunch of cameos, but it seems like Smoke's doing the majority of the work. Maybe like a Sub-Zero just to extend a combo kind of a thing.
Or
But
Sector for some of the other things. I like Smoke Sector as a pairing. I don't see that as well. I just don't see a lot of Smoke anymore. I feel like most people put him maybe not in B down with those other ones the way that you have this laid out, but like one of those when you learn almost like an Omni-Man, right? Like you learn the matchup and you know what's going on, and then it's up to him. He's covering his gaps with cancels. But if you're
yeah,
reacting to cancels, it's your turn every time. You can punish him trying to take a turn after that sort of stuff. But it's a lot to think about, and even if the overhead and the low and stuff, and it's all slow, he can be up blocked on some of the overheads. He like really forces you to not be predictable. You'll be highly punished for it, but you have to work really hard. So for that, definitely not S tier.
yeah, and
Lower end of A.
I think that his I think that like his big mix on his cancels or whether he actually cancels it or not. And if he doesn't, he's just unsafe right in your face. So but I mean, if he hits you, he hits you. That's great. But it kind of that adds a little bit of respect to it. But yeah, I think I if we were ordering this, I would have him as the lower end of A, in my opinion. Maybe
That's
B,
fair.
but I don't know.
No, that's fair. High B, low A.
Sub-Zero, and this is funny because I saw this on Twitter yesterday. Somebody had a tier list, and they had Sub-Zero with Chameleon, and then they had Sub-Zero with any other cameo.
Yep. It's
And
exactly what we were just talking about, right? Where the
yeah,
cameo just can make you S tier, and without it, you're C tier.
and I don't necessarily think that even Chameleon makes him that great of a cameo. I know you've messed with Sub-Zero, so maybe you know something I don't. I think that makes Sub-Zero his best form of Sub-Zero that he can be. But I think they had him as like S++ tier, like better than everybody else. And I just, unless there's some
Yeah.
tech out there that I don't know, I just don't see that. And I still would put him in the B tier at highest, but I'm thinking C tier just for the overall lack of cameo synergy and like that one cameo just having to bring him up to that level. I think I just
Well, the thing is that so Chameleon brings something for everybody, even on like on a really basic level. But Sub-Zero is like the character on the roster that Chameleon just doesn't work with, but he's actually has a lot of synergy with all three of her stances. It's not like you just waiting for Melina or,
right.
I've got Katana, I guess I can just do this or something. Like all of them kind of bring something to him. Melina especially because he's got the back 3-4, which is a double low, which you can mix up with her overhead or just do raw overhead because he's just got the back 3, which is a low. And then if the double low opens them up, he can't special cancel that, but Melina's size will keep that going and gets a full conversion. So he's like especially scary with Melina. I don't know about the S++. I think that's people's emotions and stuff talking, but
Right.
it definitely brings him up to that level. But if you're somebody like me, I love Chameleon like as an idea, and I like what she's done for the game. I don't personally use her because I like consistency, and I don't like to switch between. I don't want to have to like micromanage my cameo like with Tremor and stuff. And the Chameleon sort of thing fits into that to a degree. So if I'm a Sub-Zero player, and even though she brings that to the table, if I don't want to use her because it just doesn't fit my flow or my sensibilities or something, then I'm still just Sub-Zero with Serena or Sub-Zero with a nerfed Kung Lao or whatever. And it's the
Right.
same old sort of story. So it's like you haven't gotten there yet, but it's obviously the elephant in the room, and it's coming next, and it's Tanya Goro.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, so yeah, I think that's a good jumping off point of Sub-Zero there. Tanya Goro has been like the go-to since pretty much the game launched. And it's a good pairing. It's a really good pairing. It gives her damage, gives her safety, gives her less frames, insane chip. I honestly think she's one of the strongest characters in this game. So I actually have her at the S tier. I don't think she's the best character in the game necessarily. But I think that just like her best cameo pairing just makes her really obnoxious. And
I thought you weren't considering that though for the levels. This is the one I was thinking of when you're like, well, I can't just otherwise wouldn't Sub-Zero be up there because of Chameleon?
so here, well, okay, so I don't think that Tanya and Goro is on the same level as Sub and Chameleon. First off, second off, we have something new with Tanya, which is Tanya Motaro, which is insane. Which is
Dude,
actually
we were joking
insane.
about that last week about something I hadn't we'd
Yeah,
never seen
we'd never
before. I'm
seen
like, oh,
before.
and then I saw it like 3 times, like 5 minutes after that conversation.
Yeah,
Like,
it was like, and then
I
like
swear I've never seen that in my life, and now like it's
it's
so
the new
crazy.
thing, and even that,
That's true. Okay, yeah.
and even that seems even better than Tanya Goro because she's got this big chip string that she can either. It's really hard. Like you can armor it, but I mean, I think you're going to be taking the damage of the Motaro Fireball, which is I think plus 14 on block. So you basically have to do something about it, or at some point, or else she's just going to be looping it back into itself, which is super duper obnoxious. And then you have on top of that, even if you want to like keep her away and say like I don't want you on me with this Tanya Motaro stuff, just teleports to the other side. And with all the Motaro buffs that he got in the most recent, or not the most recent, but the one before patch, I think it could make Tanya one of his best pairings. That's more of a Kameo tier list conversation, but I think between those two, and of course you have Chameleon as well, so like good Kameo synergy, good damage, good pressure, good chip. I think she's just a really solid character overall. I don't really think that's too much of a hot take. I when I look at everyone in these tiers, I think that she belongs with the other characters where she is.
Okay. Yep. I think I don't disagree with any of that, and I totally forgotten about the Motaro because I feel like it's kind of new. It's something that we've just been seeing
It is.
recently, and it's a consequence of people that are like never nerf, always buff. But this is, I'm sure, exactly what NRS wanted, and their intention of nerfing cooldowns for like Cameo and Striker is because they just did too much for too many characters, and it homogenized the Cameo field. You see them paired with like literally everybody,
Yeah.
sort of thing. And so maybe people that used to use Kung Lao or Striker are now venturing off in other things. And now we're seeing Motaro's gotten a few adjustments, buffs in the past, and now we're starting to see, some new stuff like this crop out. And I think that's exactly what they wanted. And
I think it's super cool.
so,
I agree. I think that's exactly what they were hoping to see with the balance patches and the changes that they've been making. So that's my tier list right there. That's the one. You're looking at it. Maybe next week we go into a Kameo tier list. And I want to ask first you, Hatyr, but anyone else, comment on this below. How should we rate the Kameo tier list? Should we do it similar to this, where it's like, if they have like one really, really good synergy, then they're like way up there? Or is it like overall, kind of balance? Like, how would we successfully do a Kameo tier list?
I think we'd have to use the law of averages.
See which
so
works
Goro,
more.
very, very, very good with Tanya, very, very good with Kung Lao, but there's 20 whatever characters on the roster as well,
Right.
and it fits with a lot other characters, Raiden, and plenty of other characters, Melina, but you just don't really see it because people are getting other rewards for doing similar things, or it just doesn't suit their play style, or maybe doesn't have the synergy with the Cameo. So, Chameleon's going to be an S tier Cameo because
I mean,
by the law of averages, she brings something to everybody, and then even a little bit more on top, like we were just talking about Sub-Zero. So that's how I would approach it. I'm interested in what people have to say, like how they think.
Yeah, let us know. And that's it for another week. We're done. I hope you all found this interesting. So let me know any hot takes or anything that you have, or anything that you think maybe you know something I don't about anything we've talked here today. Thanks as always to Hatyr for all the help with today's episode on the official first episode of the Bonehawk Podcast. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like because it really helps me out, and subscribe if you haven't, because I make new videos almost every single day. Hashtag Bonehawks and all that stuff, and we'll see all you Bonehawks in the next video.
Accept your death.